You feel it, don't you? That silent ache beneath the noise of life, the sense that everyone else received a map you never got. You walk through this world like a ghost in plain sight, watching people play out their roles with rehearsed smiles and hollow laughter, sensing the fear behind their pride, the loneliness beneath their charm. And somewhere along the line, you started thinking maybe you were the problem. But what if you're not broken? What if you're rare? What if what you carry isn't a flaw, but a frequency? One that Carl Jung warned us about. A form of perception so piercing it unsettles everything false around it. A vision so clear it becomes dangerous. Because once you see the truth behind the masks, you can never unsee it. And once you realize what you are, pretending becomes unbearable. This isn't just insight, it's initiation. And your real life begins the moment you stop apologizing for seeing what others can't. It's this moment that makes they talk and you listen, but not the way others do. You don't just hear words, you feel the space between them. You notice the hesitation before the laugh, the flicker in the eyes when they lie to themselves, the micro expressions that slip out like ghosts of truth. It's not a skill you learned, it's something you were born with. And though you never asked for it, you carry it like a second skin. A perception so sharp, it cuts through the illusions people cling to. Jung called it dangerous perception, and he was right. Because when you see the world this clearly, when you see people not for who they pretend to be, but for who they are beneath the masks, you become something terrifying, a mirror. And mirrors are not welcome in places built on denial. Your presence alone becomes unsettling. You walk into a room and tension rises, not because of anything you say, but because something unconscious in them senses it. You see their shadow, the parts they buried, the pain they've never named, the truth they've worked their entire lives to escape. And so they call you names to protect themselves. You're too intense. You overthink everything. Can't you just be normal? But you know better. You've tried being normal. You've laughed at jokes that made your soul flinch. You've nodded in conversations that felt like slow death. You've played the game, and each time a piece of you slipped further away. Because to be accepted in this world often means betraying the very gift that makes you valuable. Your truth-telling eyes, your sensitivity to distortion, your refusal to lie, even silently. Think about your last conversation. Someone spoke about success, but you felt the quiet collapse behind their smile. They bragged about their relationship, but their energy screamed desperation. You didn't ask to see this, you didn't choose it, and yet it chooses you every single day. It's exhausting, isn't it, carrying this invisible sight, knowing things no one wants spoken, feeling what others bury. Watching people perform while pretending not to notice they're dying inside. But here's the cruel beauty of it. This ability that isolates you is also what makes you powerful, not in the loud, performative sense, but in the ancient, alchemical sense. Because you don't just witness the world, you decode it, and while that might cost you comfort, it grants you something infinitely rarer: clarity. But clarity comes with a price. It makes superficiality unbearable. It makes pretending impossible. It makes fitting in feel like spiritual suicide, and most of all, it forces you to live in exile among the unaware. Jung warned of this. He said that those who awaken first will often feel like they're going mad, not because they're broken, but because they've stepped outside the shared dream. You're not broken, you're awake. You're not too much. You're too real in a world built on make-believe, and once you accept that, everything changes. Your exhaustion starts to make sense. Your loneliness becomes less of a curse and more of a signal that you're here for something deeper, something few will ever understand. And maybe that's the point. Because this perception, this dangerous gift, it was never meant to make you fit in. It was meant to help you find the others who see through the world just like you. It happens almost every day. Someone starts talking, about the weather, their favorite show, what someone wore at work, and something inside you begins to shut down, not out of arrogance, not out of boredom, but because your soul can't survive on such thin air. You don't want more noise, you want meaning. Jung understood this hunger. He said that rare personality types live in constant existential tension, caught between a world addicted to surfaces and an inner world that demands depth. You've tried, haven't you, smiling through small talk, faking interest in things that barely graze the surface of what you actually feel. But each of those moments feels like slow erosion, a kind of spiritual starvation that no amount of socializing can fix. Because what you crave is not attention, it's connection, and not just any connection. The kind where masks fall off, where silence is sacred, where both people are allowed to be, without performance, without pretense. This is why casual friendships often leave you lonelier than being alone, why the party drains you faster than silence ever could. Because when you can feel the truth beneath people's words, you begin to resent conversations built to avoid truth. You want to ask real questions. Why are we here? What keeps you up at night? Where does your soul go when no one's watching? But those questions aren't welcome in most rooms. They make people uncomfortable. They break the spell of illusion. And so again, you become the outsider, the one who goes too deep, too fast, who doesn't know how to lighten up. But what no one tells you is this: that discomfort you create, it's sacred. It means your presence has weight. It means you're not just another echo in the hall of noise. You're a tuning fork for truth. Yet that truth comes with a cost. Because while you long for connection, you've learned the hard way that most people don't. Most people want comfort, not transformation. Validation, not honesty. They don't want to be seen, they want to be agreed with. And when you can't give them that, they drift, or they turn, or they label you difficult, intense, impossible to please. But the truth is, you're not asking for too much. You're asking for something real in a world that rewards the artificial. You're asking to be met below the surface, and very few are willing to go there. And so you spend your life oscillating between craving connection and protecting your energy, between trying to fit in and refusing to betray yourself, between loving deeply and grieving often. Because every shallow interaction feels like a quiet betrayal of who you really are. But here's the thing, your intolerance isn't a flaw. It's a compass. It points you toward your real tribe, those who speak in soul, not surface, those whose eyes don't glaze over when the conversation turns to mystery, death, desire, spirit. Those who, like you, are starving for something sacred. You're not made for empty spaces. You're made for the marrow of things. And until you start honoring that truth, you will continue to feel like a foreigner in your own life. So don't shrink. Don't apologize. Don't pretend you're satisfied with crumbs when your soul was built for fire. The world doesn't need more agreeable masks. It needs the dangerous, inconvenient, soul-waking depth that lives inside you. There's a weight you carry that no one else sees, a heaviness that follows you home even after the room is empty. You sit alone, but you're not alone. You're crowded by energies, emotions, fragments of other people's unspoken pain. You walk through the world like a sponge in a storm. You absorb everything, their tension, their grief, their self-loathing, their silent rage. They don't even have to say it, you feel it, like static in the air, like a frequency your body can't help but tune into. Carl Jung called this participation mystique, the dissolving of boundaries between the self and the collective unconscious. For most people, it happens in rare moments. For you, it's constant, unchosen, unrelenting. You wake up heavy and can't explain why. You walk into a room and feel a cold sadness that doesn't belong to you. Someone sits beside you on the bus and suddenly your heart starts pounding. And only later do you realize it wasn't your anxiety at all, it was theirs. This is more than empathy. This is energetic merging. And it's both your gift and your greatest threat, because while you're tending to the wounds of others, quietly, invisibly, unconsciously, you begin to lose track of where they end and you begin. Their pain becomes your burden. Their chaos becomes your weather system. And you wonder why you're exhausted even after doing nothing. It's because you've been carrying souls all day. You need solitude, not just to rest, but to sort. To lay out the psychic debris scattered across your inner floor and ask, is this mine? Did this originate from me? Or did I pick it up while smiling politely through someone else's performance? And yet, there's a shadow here too, one even deeper. Because sometimes, drowning in other people's emotions is a refuge. It spares you from confronting your own. It gives you purpose. It distracts you from your emptiness. You become the healer, the listener, the one everyone leans on. But in doing so, you become a stranger to yourself. Everyone else's soul is familiar. Yours is a distant echo. And that's when the fracture begins, when your gift turns against you, when your ability to carry others leaves you hollow. And no one sees it because you hide it so well. You're the strong one, the deep one, the one who just gets it. But who gets you? You're not weak for needing time alone. You're not selfish for turning off your phone, canceling plans, disappearing for days. You're not antisocial. You're protecting your sacred space, the place where you remember who you are beneath the noise. Because here's the truth. You can't help anyone if you've lost yourself in the process. And your sensitivity, this raw, radiant frequency you carry, it's not here to destroy you. It's here to refine you, to teach you discernment, to show you the sacred difference between compassion and self-erasure. So if you're feeling too much, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're tuned to a deeper band. And if you're drowning, it's time to ask the question that might just save your life. What if this feeling isn't mine? You wake up and put on a face. Not makeup, not a smile, something deeper. A version of yourself carefully assembled for the day ahead. Professional you, pleasant you, socially acceptable you. And each one is a fraction, a sliver, a costume stitched from survival. But none of them are real. Not fully. Not the way you are when no one's watching. You've become a master of adaptation. You lower your voice around fragile egos. You hide your insight to protect other people's comfort. You dim your truth to keep peace that isn't real. Not because you're fake, but because the full force of your being has never been safe in this world. And so you split. Not once, but endlessly. A mask for work, a mask for family, a mask for friends. Each one slightly different, each one slightly more exhausting, until eventually you forget what your original face looked like. Jung warned of this fragmentation. He said, the self cannot survive divided forever, because every time you shrink, dilute, or edit your truth to be more palatable, something inside you dies a little, and eventually it shows. Not in obvious ways, but in subtle symptoms that no doctor can name. Chronic fatigue, anxiety that whispers in empty rooms, depression that drapes itself over your mornings like a heavy, nameless fog. You're not sick, you're split. And that split is not mental illness, it's a spiritual crisis. Your soul is starving for wholeness, for coherence, for one version of you that doesn't change depending on who enters the room. But how can you be fully yourself in a world that keeps punishing your intensity? How can you stop fragmenting when wholeness feels like a risk, when authenticity feels like exile? Here's the paradox. The very qualities that make you feel too much for the world are exactly what the world needs most. Your depth, your truth, your unfiltered vision. That's your medicine, but it can't heal anyone, not even you, if it's locked behind 1,000 masks. So the real danger isn't that others won't accept you. The danger is you'll keep silencing yourself until you no longer recognize the sound of your own voice. Wholeness isn't just a spiritual ideal. It's the only way out of the exhaustion, the only way to stop bleeding energy trying to be everything you're not, the only way to reclaim your power. Because every time you show up as your fragmented self, You feed the lie that the real you isn't welcome. And every time you refuse to fragment, even if it costs you approval, you strengthen your center. And that center, that's where your power lives. That's where your healing begins. So take off the mask, even if it's just for a moment, even if no one claps, even if it shakes everything you've built. Because the cost of the lie is your life, and your life deserves to be lived as one whole, undivided soul. And then it happens. Rarely, quietly, without warning. You meet someone, and the room stops humming. Time warps, the air shifts, and before a single word is spoken, you know, there you are. I've been waiting for you. It defies logic. It makes no sense on paper, but something deeper than language pulses between you. An ancient recognition, as if two souls separated by centuries just stumbled into the same timeline. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, the mysterious alignment of internal and external events with no causal explanation. But this is more than coincidence. This is resonance. It's frequency meeting frequency. Signal finally receiving signal. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to shrink. You don't have to translate your soul into something more digestible, because they already speak your language. And for a moment, you're not the outsider anymore. You're not too much. You're not alone in the way you feel, see, ache. You are met. And in a world where you've had to dull your edges, monitor your truth, and carry your solitude like armor, being met like this feels like salvation. It feels like home. But here's the tragedy. These moments are rare. Maybe once, maybe twice, maybe never, if you've stopped trusting your own signal. Because when you spent a lifetime being unseen, unheard, mislabeled, and misunderstood, you start believing maybe no one like you exists, but they do. And when they enter your life, even for a breath, it changes you. Because once you've tasted soul recognition, nothing else satisfies. Once you've stood in that sacred space, where truth moves freely and masks dissolve like fog, you can no longer pretend to enjoy the weather, talk, and empty rituals. Everything else becomes starvation. And that's where the shadow comes in. Because after soul recognition, you may start sabotaging anything that asks you to go back. You won't tolerate relationships that dilute you. You'll walk away from comfort if it costs your truth. You'll choose solitude over pretending, again and again. And people will say you're impossible, that your standards are too high, that you expect too much. But what they don't understand is that once your soul remembers what it feels like to be seen, it will never again settle for invisibility. You can't go backward. You can't pretend to forget. This is the burden and the blessing of being rare. Because rare recognizes rare. And when it finds it, even for a moment, it rewrites everything. So don't lower your frequency just to feel less lonely. Don't silence your signal to blend in. Because your signal is how they'll find you. And they will. Not the crowd. Not the many. But the few, the real, the ones who hear something ancient in your voice and say, there you are. I've been listening for you. You've always felt it, haven't you? That quiet pull beneath the surface of your daily life. A restlessness that never fully sleeps. An ache that no achievement, no relationship, no distraction can touch. You've tried to name it, a dream, a calling, a mission, but none of those words are big enough. Because what lives inside you isn't a goal. It's a destiny, a purpose too vast, too sacred, too soul-woven to ever be fully contained within a single lifetime. Jung spoke of this, how certain individuals, after integrating their shadow and reclaiming their true self, begin to sense something larger moving through them. Not ambition, not ego, but a cosmic assignment. A knowing in the bones, a fire in the blood. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't come with a map. But it wakes you at 3 a.m. with visions, fragments, strange memories that don't feel like yours. It whispers through synchronicities, through dreams, through heartbreak. And no matter how far you try to run from it, it follows you. Because it is you. This is why you can't stay in environments that lack meaning, why conventional paths feel suffocating, why even when everything looks fine from the outside, something inside you still screams, "This isn't it." Because it isn't. You weren't born to simply survive. You weren't born to rise and repeat and call it a life. You came here to shift something, to break patterns that have changed generations, to create, to speak, to heal in ways that the world isn't ready for, but desperately needs. And that's the paradox, because the same sensitivity that lets you feel this purpose so intensely is the same sensitivity that makes it agonizing to fulfill. You feel exposed when you step into your truth. You feel raw when you offer your medicine. You feel alone when you refuse to play small. That's not weakness, that's the cost of carrying light in a world addicted to shadow. Of being a bridge between what is and what could be. And yes, it hurts. Because no one tells you that fulfilling your purpose will often feel like grief. The grief of shedding old selves, the grief of being misunderstood, the grief of realizing that the path you must walk mostly alone. But here's what they don't tell you. Your purpose is not a destination, it's a frequency. It's not what you do, it's who you are when you stop pretending. And every time you choose truth over comfort, depth over safety, alignment over approval, you step into it, you live it, you become it. So if you've been feeling like nothing is ever enough, it's not because you're ungrateful. It's because you were born with a blueprint for something bigger, something timeless, something eternal. Not success, not fame, but impact, alchemy, a ripple in the collective soul that only you can make. And if you don't answer the call, it won't punish you. It'll haunt you. Gently, quietly. Like a song you once knew but can't remember the words to. You don't need to finish it all in this lifetime. You just need to begin. To say yes, to stop hiding, to stop waiting for the world to make space, and make it yourself. There is a place in you that still hurts when no one is looking. A wound too old to explain, too familiar to forget. You've carried it for so long you've mistaken it for part of who you are. But it's not your weakness. It's your origin story. Carl Jung called it the sacred wound, a psychic injury so deep, so defining, that it splits you open and awakens everything. Maybe it started in childhood, when you felt things others didn't, when you saw through the masks your family wore and were punished for noticing. When your tears were too much, your silence too strange, your questions too unsettling, you learned to bury your truth just to survive. But even buried, it never died. It waited. That pain you thought would destroy you, it became your compass. It taught you how to read people without words. It trained your nervous system to pick up what others can't even feel. It forced you inward, where the rest of your gifts were hiding. You didn't grow despite the wound. You grew through it. Your sensitivity, it was born in the hollow spaces where love should have lived. Your insight, sharpened by years of watching what no one dared to say. Your compassion, forged in the fires of your own loneliness, your own exile, your own inner war. You know how to guide people through darkness not because you studied it, but because you lived there. You made a home in the underworld and came back carrying medicine. And that medicine isn't theory, it's presence. It's the way your eyes soften when someone says they're fine, but you know they're not. It's how you hold space for the unspeakable without flinching. It's how you speak truth so raw, it burns away every lie in the room. But here's what no one tells you. Healing the wound isn't about erasing it. It's about integrating it, honoring it, letting it become the sacred mark that says, I survived what should have broken me, and now ain't dangerous to every illusion. Because that's the alchemical truth. What once shattered you becomes the reason others finally feel whole. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. Not because you're untouched by pain, but because you transformed it. You didn't escape the darkness, you became light inside it, and now you're being called not to pretend it never happened, but to lead others through the same terrain, to remind them that pain doesn't mean they're broken. It means they're becoming. So wear your wound like a crown. Speak from the scar, not the trauma. Because the moment you stop hiding your ache, you become a mirror for someone else's awakening. You were never too sensitive. You were never too intense. You were marked, chosen, tempered by suffering to carry a truth this world still doesn't know how to receive. But some will. And when they do, you'll recognize them by the way their eyes soften, the way their breath slows, the way they whisper, "Thank you for saying what I didn't know how to say." That's when you'll know. Your greatest pain was never just pain. It was your pathway. It was your initiation. It was your gift. So now you know. You're not too much. You're not broken. You're not lost. You're rare. And everything that made you feel out of place, your depth, your perception, your ache for something more, was never the problem. It was the invitation. To remember who you are beneath the fragments, to reclaim the parts you buried just to be accepted, to stop apologizing for the very qualities this world is starving for, because your intensity is not a flaw, it's a flame. Your sensitivity is not weakness, it's sacred technology. Your solitude, your exhaustion, your grief, they were never signs of failure. They were symptoms of awakening. You are not here to fit in. You are here to wake others up, to live with your soul unmuted, to speak what others bury, to walk as proof that it's possible to be both scarred and whole, both human and holy. But knowing you're rare isn't enough. You have to choose it. You have to embody it. Because the world will keep asking you to shrink until you say no. The world will keep rewarding your silence until you choose truth over approval. This is your threshold, your turning point. You can either go back to pretending, back to performance, back to the slow death of living someone else's life. Or you can rise, fully, without mask, without apology, without waiting for permission. Yes, it will cost you. People will leave, comfort will burn, but what you gain is everything. Your people will find you. Your work will reveal itself. Your soul will exhale. And the life you were always meant to live, the one hidden beneath the masks and noise and compromise, will finally begin. So breathe deep, stand tall, speak the words only you were born to speak. The world doesn't need more conformity. It needs you, undiluted, unapologetic, and awake. If this spoke to something ancient in you, like this video, share it with the one person you know needs to hear it. Comment below with 3 words, "I am rare," and watch how many people answer back. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Inner Alchemy right now. This is only the beginning. The journey gets deeper from here. Welcome to your real life. Welcome to your frequency. Welcome home.